sky over Corrales 4 split open. Thunder rolled across the horizon. Not natural thunder, but the echo of dropships punching through the upper atmosphere. Their hulls gleamed silver against the rain, each one bearing the black insignia of the Earth Colonial Command. Inside the lunchbox, Thomas Hale watched from the window as the ships descended. 6, maybe 7, leaving trails of fire in the gray dawn. He didn't move. He just stood there, coffee cooling beside him, the royal cipher medallion heavy in his pocket. Outside, the city alarms began to wail. Vendors shuttered their stalls. Drones buzzed overhead, broadcasting evacuation orders in half a dozen languages. The storm was coming, and it was coming for him. The first dropship landed in the alley outside the diner, engines screaming. Wind tore through the narrow street, knocking over trash bins and rattling loose signs. The rain turned to mist in the engine wash. Then came the soldiers, black armor, mirrored visors, rifles glowing faint blue with plasma charge. They moved with the kind of precision Thomas had seen before, special forces trained for alien containment, not peacekeeping. Their commander stepped forward, a broad man with a shaved head and a voice that carried over the storm. "Thomas Hale," he shouted, "by order of the Earth Colonial Command, you are under arrest for aiding and abetting an enemy sovereign." Thomas leaned in the doorway of his diner, wiping his hands on a towel. "Morning to you too, Lieutenant." The officer scowled. "You've been in contact with Empress Ka'reth Vey'la, leader of the sovereign systems. Do you deny it?" Thomas sighed. "She came in for coffee. You gonna arrest every waiter?" "Who serves an alien diplomat now? Don't play games," the lieutenant snapped. "We tracked her signal to this location. Our satellites picked up residual energy readings from her teleport beacon inside this establishment." "Well," Thomas said dryly, "that'd explain why my electric bill's so damn high." A few of the soldiers chuckled under their breath. The lieutenant didn't. He raised a hand. "Search the place." Thomas stepped forward, blocking the door. "You don't need to do that." "Step aside, civilian." "Not yet." The soldiers hesitated. There was something in his voice. Calm, firm, the kind that came from someone who'd seen worse things than threats. Thomas met the lieutenant's visor, his reflection ghost-like in the polished surface. "You send men like these into fights they don't understand. You tell them who the enemy is. But I've seen her kids, Lieutenant. They're not soldiers. They're just children." The lieutenant's jaw tightened. "Those children are heirs to an empire that killed 10,000 humans on Arcadia Prime. They're not innocent." Thomas's voice didn't rise, but his eyes hardened. "You ever seen a hungry kid, son? They don't care about empires." "Enough," the lieutenant barked. "You're coming with us." And that's when the air changed. A deep hum rolled through the alley, low at first, then swelling into a vibration that made the puddles ripple. The soldiers looked up. Above them, the clouds tore apart. Descending through the storm came a fleet of obsidian warships, each one massive enough to blot out the sun. The lead vessel's hull shimmered with glowing symbols, the same sigil etched on the medallion in Thomas's pocket. The soldiers froze. The lieutenant whispered, "Oh God!" A blinding column of light struck the ground in the alley, scattering debris and vaporizing rain. When the light faded, Ka'reth Vey'la stood there, cloaked in armor that looked forged from the night sky itself, her eyes burning silver like twin stars. Her voice echoed, amplified by the energy that crackled in the air. "Step away from him." The soldiers stumbled backward instinctively. Every weapon in the alley auto-targeted her, and still she didn't flinch. The lieutenant tried to stand firm. "Empress Vey'la, this is human jurisdiction. You are violating—" "Enough," Ka'reth said, her voice calm but cold. "You threaten a man who offered sanctuary to my children. You insult the only being in this sector who remembers what mercy feels like." Her guards materialized behind her, towering aliens in radiant armor, each carrying weapons that hummed with restrained power. The air itself seemed to bend around them. Thomas stepped out of the diner, holding up a hand. "Ka'reth, stop." She turned to him, eyes flashing. "They came to kill you." "They came to arrest me," he said. "There's a difference. They would have killed you if you resisted." He gave her a look that only old soldiers could. Then I'd have made damn sure it was worth it. Ka'reth's expression softened for a heartbeat, something almost human flickering across her features. The lieutenant, sweating now, barked into his comms. All units, retreat to fallback. Before he could finish, a streak of energy flashed across the sky. Not from Ka'reth's ships, but from orbit. A human cruiser had locked onto her flagship and fired. The blast hit the Empress's vessel like a miniature sun exploding. The shockwave rippled across the clouds, shaking the city's foundations. For a second, the sky was nothing but light. When the glow faded, the flagship still stood. Shields crackling, battered but intact. The retaliation came instantly. The sovereign fleet powered up its weapons. Thomas's stomach dropped. This wasn't a raid anymore. This was about to become a war zone. He turned to Ka'reth. "Call them off." "They fired first," she snapped. "I cannot." "You can," he said sharply. "You're their Empress, damn it. If you start this fight, it won't end here. It'll burn half the sector." Ka'reth hesitated. The rage in her eyes flickered, replaced by doubt, then pain. "Thomas," she whispered. "They attacked me." "Yeah," he said softly. "But they're scared, just like your kids were. Don't prove them right about what you are." For a long moment, everything was still, the rain hanging in the air, the hum of weapons charging, every soldier and guard frozen between life and death. Then Ka'reth turned away. Her voice dropped into a tone of command that resonated through the comms of her fleet. "All units stand down." The alien soldiers lowered their weapons in perfect unison. The sky dimmed as the glowing weapon arrays on the sovereign ships powered down. The lieutenant exhaled shakily. You just stopped them." Thomas nodded. "Told you. She's not here to fight." Ka'reth looked back at him, her voice softer now. "You risked your life to reason with me." He smiled faintly. "You came all this way for your kids. Figured you weren't the type to blow up the guy who fed them." She stepped closer, the stormlight gleaming off her armor. "You think you understand me?" "I think," he said quietly. "You just needed someone to treat you like a person for once." Something changed in her expression then. The hard edges of power softening, replaced by something fragile. Something grateful. "You remind me of my mate," she said quietly. "He believed kindness could end wars." Thomas smiled sadly. "Maybe it can." Hours later, the storm finally cleared. The soldiers were recalled. The fleet lifted back into the clouds, vanishing into the upper atmosphere, and in the silence that followed, the lunchbox stood untouched, a tiny island of peace in a galaxy that had almost torn itself apart. Ka'reth remained at the counter, without her armor now. The silver light in her eyes dimmed, replaced by something weary but alive. "You know," Thomas said, stirring a pot of soup again, "for a galactic ruler, you sure cause a lot of mess for one old cook." She smiled faintly. "And yet, you still feed me. Can't let my best customer go hungry." She watched him ladle the stew, the smell filling the diner once more. "Thomas Hale," she said softly, "I will never forget what you did today." "Just another lunch rush," he said. Her smile grew. "No, today you stopped a war." He shrugged. "Wars end when people eat together." She tilted her head. "A human proverb?" "Something like that." He slid a bowl toward her. "Eat. You've had a long day, Empress." Ka'reth took a spoonful, then looked up. "Will you come with us? I could use an advisor. Someone who remembers compassion." Thomas shook his head. "This is my post. Somebody's got to make lunch for whoever walks in next." Ka'reth nodded slowly. "Then I'll make sure this world remembers you." When she left, she didn't vanish in light this time. She walked out the front door, turned once in the rain, and smiled. And for a long time after, the galaxy was quiet. Epilogue, the Feast of Unity. Months. Later the message arrived, not by courier, not by broadcast, but through every channel in every known language. By decree of Empress Ka'reth Vey'la, this day shall be remembered across the sovereign systems and the human colonies alike as the Feast of Unity. in honor of the man who fed my children when the stars turned cold. Across planets, species gathered, human, alien, hybrid, to share meals, stories, and laughter. No soldiers, no weapons, just food, warmth, and memory. At the center of it all, on a quiet world bathed in twin suns, stood the lunchbox, still running, its sign freshly painted. Inside, a single photo hung behind the counter. Thomas Hale shaking hands with the Empress, both smiling. Underneath, a handwritten note read, "He fed us when we were hungry." Far above, in orbit around a distant star, Ka'reth Vey'la stood, on the bridge of her ship, watching the celebrations spread across worlds. She held a steaming cup of coffee, black, just the way he drank it, and whispered into the void, "Rest well, my friend. You fed the galaxy." The rain hadn't stopped by morning. It came down in silvery sheets, drumming softly against the diner's old roof and washing the grime off the alley walls. Corylus Ivy's dawn light turned the puddles into mirrors of soft gold, broken only by the ripple of passing boots. Inside the lunchbox, the coffee machine hissed and sputtered like an irritated dragon. Thomas Hale sat by the counter, staring at the strange medallion lying in his palm. It pulsed faintly, not visually, but in his fingertips. Alive somehow, like it was waiting. He hadn't slept much. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faint silhouettes of ships cutting through the upper atmosphere the night before. Warships. He knew that look. He'd lived under their shadows too many times to mistake them for anything else. He turned the medallion over. The surface was covered in angular symbols, ancient but graceful. He didn't recognize the script, but it carried weight. Royal, maybe. Sacred. He thought of the smallest alien child, Spoon, eyes wide with fear, drenched in the rain, thrusting this thing into his hands as though the world depended on it. Maybe it did. Thomas sighed and poured himself another cup of black coffee. He needed it. His hands trembled slightly. Maybe age, maybe nerves. The bell above the door jingled. He looked up. The diner was still closed, the sign outside dim, the tables empty. And yet someone stood in the doorway, tall, hooded, cloaked in fabric that shimmered faintly like oil under light, colors shifting, never still. She wasn't human. That much was clear from the way she moved, too fluid, too silent, as if the air itself made space for her. "Sorry," Thomas said gruffly. "We're not open yet, I know," the woman replied. Her voice was soft but carried weight, not loud, but the kind that made the room pay attention, like the quiet before a storm. "I'm looking for something," she said, or rather someone. Thomas set his cup down, casual but careful. "You might have the wrong alley." "Not many someones here except me," the woman's eyes, bright silver like molten stars, locked onto him. "You fed my children." The words froze him mid-breath. She took a slow step forward, pulling back her hood. For a heartbeat, Thomas forgot how to speak. Her skin shimmered faintly, a pale lavender hue that caught the light like polished pearl. A crest of fine filaments ran along her temples, bioluminescent, pulsing with faint energy. Her face was otherworldly. Beautiful, yes, but in the way a nebula was. Vast, dangerous, impossible to fully understand. Thomas managed a breath. "Your kids?" The woman nodded once. "3. Blink, Tapper, and the smallest. The one you call Spoon." His hand twitched toward the counter unconsciously, where the medallion lay hidden under a napkin. "They come by sometimes." "Didn't think they had a mother nearby?" "They shouldn't," she said. "It's not safe," Thomas frowned. "Safe from who?" She didn't answer. Instead, she walked past him, slow, graceful, and glanced around the diner. Her eyes lingered on the walls, the mismatched chairs, the coffee machine that hissed like it was alive. Then she stopped before the old military plaque. Hanging behind the counter, Earth. Expeditionary Corps, Epsilon Ridge Division. Her expression shifted. Sadness, recognition, maybe even guilt. "You were a soldier," she said. "Quietly, once," he admitted. "A lifetime ago. You fought on Epsilon Ridge?" He hesitated. "Yeah, you know the place." The woman's silver eyes softened. "I do." Thomas studied her face, that strange mix of grace and gravity. "Who are you really?" She looked down at her hands for a moment, then lifted her gaze, eyes burning like liquid metal. "I am Ka'reth Vey'la," she said. First Empress of the sovereign systems, voice of the outer stars, and the mother of the children you've been feeding. The coffee machine gave a final hiss and fell silent. Thomas's mind blanked. He'd heard that name before, everyone in human space had. Ka'reth Vey'la, the conqueror of the Ardon Belt, the ruler whose fleets had once reduced Earth's outer colonies to ash before the ceasefire. The most feared being in 3 sectors, and she was standing in his diner. He exhaled slowly, eyes narrowing. Hell of a title. You expect me to bow or something? Her lips curved faintly. Not quite a smile. No, you're one of the few in this galaxy who doesn't need to. He leaned on the counter, keeping his tone steady. So why's someone like you slumming it down here, Empress? Her gaze fell to the counter, the napkin-covered medallion. Because something precious to me has gone missing. Thomas didn't move. A little piece of jewelry, maybe? She looked up sharply. Their eyes met. He didn't flinch. You have it, she said softly. Not accusation, just certainty. Thomas lifted the napkin. The medallion shimmered faintly in the morning light. One of your kids dropped it. Gave it, she corrected. They were told to keep it hidden. For their safety. Why? What's it do? He asked. She walked closer, every step soundless. That medallion is a royal cipher core. It carries my genetic signature. Anyone who possesses it can command my fleets. Thomas stared down at it like it had just turned into a live grenade. You're telling me I've been walking around with the keys to a galactic army in my pocket? Yes. Lady, he muttered. You really need to teach your kids about keeping track of important things. She laughed softly, a sound like chimes echoing through water. Perhaps I should. Then her voice softened, almost sorrowful. They trust you, Thomas Hale. They told me you never asked who they were. You only made sure they were fed. He shrugged. Hungry's hungry. Don't matter if they're human or not. Ka'reth studied him carefully. Do you know how rare that is? In a galaxy where every species draws lines around what they call their own. He didn't answer. Just poured another cup of coffee and slid it toward her. So, Empress of the Stars, you take it black or with cream? Her expression flickered, amusement winning over formality. She took the cup, held it delicately, and inhaled. Black, always black. Thomas smirked. Then you've got good taste. They sat in silence for a moment, a war hero and a galactic ruler, sharing coffee in a half-broken diner at the edge of civilization. Finally, she said, I know what you're thinking, that I don't belong here. Actually, Thomas said, I was thinking you probably don't get to drink coffee with commoners very often. That made her smile again, but this time there was sadness in it. You'd be surprised what I miss. The galaxy looks different when no one dares to tell you the truth. He nodded slowly. Power does that. She studied him. You speak as if you've had it. I've seen what it does, he said. And what it costs. Ka'reth lowered her eyes. Do you know what the hardest part of ruling is, Thomas? It's not the wars or the politics or the weight of planets. It's the quiet moments. The times you realize you can't walk into a place like this without someone bowing or drawing a weapon. Her fingers brushed the counter, tracing the rough wood, the faint stains of old meals. Here, your diner smells like home. He chuckled softly. Home smells like burnt toast and bad wiring. Like peace, she said simply. For a while they just sat there, two people who had seen too much of the galaxy, finding quiet in the storm. Then Ka'reth's expression shifted. Her eyes went distant, unfocused, as if hearing something only she could perceive. A faint blue light flickered behind her irises, Thomas noticed. Something wrong? She didn't answer at first. Then softly, my fleet reports movement in orbit. Unidentified vessels entering from the human border. Thomas frowned. Ours? Your military? Yes, she said. They've tracked me here. He stood. Then you should go. Ka'reth met his gaze, unflinching. If I leave now, they'll follow. If I stay, you'll be branded a collaborator, Thomas sighed. Story of my life. The sound of distant engines echoed faintly through the rain. Low, ominous. The air began to vibrate. Ka'reth rose from her seat. Thomas, thank you. For what you did for my children. He shook his head. Didn't do much. Just made lunch. Her silver eyes softened. You fed hope in a place where it was starving. She turned toward the door, and for a moment, the light outside seemed to bend around her. The air shimmered faintly with static energy. Thomas called out, Empress. She paused. "If your kids come by again," he said, "tell them the stew's on the house." Ka'reth smiled, a small, genuine smile that made her seem suddenly human. "I'll tell them," she said softly. "And Thomas, whatever happens, stay inside today." Before he could ask why, her form dissolved, not vanished, but folded into the air, like starlight caught in wind. The door chimed once, though she'd already gone. Thomas stood there for a long time, listening to the rain, the hum of distant ships, the faint heartbeat of the medallion still lying on the counter. He muttered under his breath, "Well, hell, I think I just made coffee for a queen." Outside, lightning split the clouds, revealing the faint, terrifying outline of battleships breaking through orbit. The storm had come to Ka'reth 4, and the galaxy was about to find out where its empress had been hiding. The city of Ka'reth 4 never truly slept. Even when its twin suns sank below the metal horizon, the air buzzed with the hum of power lines, the whine of passing hovercraft, and the faint electric pulse of advertisements flickering against the smog. The streets were rivers of noise and neon. Traders yelled in 10 different tongues, engines coughed smoke that smelled like burnt metal, and the whole world seemed to vibrate under the endless commerce of the galaxy. At the end of one forgotten alley, narrow, cracked and forever half-shadowed by overhanging hollow signs, stood a small diner. Its sign was old, the paint half-peeled, the name nearly unreadable. The lunchbox. It didn't look like much. A flickering neon spoon buzzed above the door. The tables were mismatched. The air smelled faintly of oil and spice and the faint tang of cleaning alcohol. But every afternoon, when the sun's light hit the edge of the diner window just right, the place seemed to glow warm, like an oasis in the middle of steel and sorrow. Inside, Thomas Hale worked quietly behind the counter. Gray at the temples, built like a man who used to fight wars but now fought only rust and time, he moved with slow precision. A veteran of too many campaigns and too few victories. The wrinkles around his eyes were the kind made not by laughter, but by dust, loss, and too many mornings where sleep came late. He wasn't supposed to still be alive. Not after the siege of Epsilon Ridge, not after the bombing of the Kaloon Belt. But somehow, Thomas had outlasted the wars that had burned the edges of human space, and he had found something else to fight for. Lunch. The pot simmered on the stove, bubbling thick with stew, a blend of root vegetables from Mars hydro farms, protein blocks from Ka'reth markets, and a secret ingredient he never told anyone about. The smell drifted out the door, across the alley, down into the lower tiers of the city, and as it always did, it brought them. Tiny shadows moved at the edge of the alley, 3, sometimes 4 of them. Small figures with cloaks pulled tight around their thin bodies. You wouldn't notice them if you weren't looking. Most people didn't, but Thomas always noticed. He wiped his hands on a towel, looked toward the alley entrance, and smiled to himself. "They're late," he muttered. "Guess they found a new route." A few seconds later, the bell over the door jingled. Soft, tentative. Then 3 small shapes stepped in. Their hoods glimmered faintly with moisture. Their feet made soft scraping noises against the floor. One of them sniffed the air and chirped a small metallic sound. Thomas turned with his usual mock sternness. Well, if it isn't my favorite freeloaders." The tallest of the 3 blinked up at him, 2 crystalline eyes glowing faint blue from beneath the hood. Then the child made a quick sign with her fingers, a little bow-like motion, something she must have learned from him. Thomas chuckled. Yeah. Sit down before the stew gets cold." The kids scrambled to their usual corner booth, the one near the heating vent. They were quiet, always quiet, but their body language betrayed excitement. The smallest one drummed its clawed fingers against the table in a rhythm that reminded Thomas of music. He ladled soup into 3 bowls, steam curling upward like soft ghosts. "You all got names yet?" he asked, though he already knew they wouldn't answer. "Or are we still going with my nicknames?" He pointed to each in turn. "You're Blink, 'cause your eyes flash when you're excited. You're Tapper, on account of your drumming habit. And you," he nodded to the smallest one, "you're Spoon because you keep trying to take my spoons home." The smallest one froze, spoon halfway to its mouth. Thomas grinned. "Caught you again, huh?" The child tilted its head, a gesture that somehow managed to look both guilty and proud. Thomas laughed softly. "Don't worry. I've got plenty." He set another bowl on the counter for himself, sat across from them, and ate quietly. He didn't talk much while they ate. They didn't either. But the silence was comfortable. The kind of silence that didn't need to be filled. The only sounds were the clink of spoons, the faint hum of the diner's power core, and the distant echo of city life beyond the door. After a while, the eldest child, Blink, pushed her bowl forward and made a small gesture in the air. Thomas had learned that one too. Gratitude. "You're welcome," he said softly. "Now you three better get home before curfew." The lower levels get rough after dusk. They chirped softly in response, a clicking pattern that was part language, part laughter. Then, as they always did, they each took a small wrapped loaf of bread from the counter, leftovers he pretended not to notice them taking, and slipped back into the alley. The door jingled once, then closed, and Thomas Hale was alone again. He cleaned the dishes slowly, humming an old Earth tune as the city's glow dimmed outside. He didn't know why he cared about those alien kids. They could have been anyone's, street urchins, refugees, orphans from some far-off war. He didn't even know what species they were. Their biology didn't match any he'd seen during the wars. Fragile, almost crystalline, like beings carved from living glass. Didn't matter. They were hungry. And he had food. That was enough. When the last plate was clean, Thomas stepped outside for a smoke. The alley stretched out before him, slick with rain and neon reflections. The distant hum of hover engines echoed between walls. Somewhere above, thunder rolled, though it hadn't rained on Corrales in years without the weather regulator's permission. He took a drag, leaned against the doorframe, and stared into the dark. For a moment he thought he saw movement at the far end of the alley, a taller figure cloaked, standing perfectly still, watching. He squinted. The figure didn't move. Just stood there, haloed by the flicker of a broken hollow ad. Then, as if sensing his gaze, it vanished into the shadows. Thomas exhaled slowly, smoke curling from his lips. "Great," he muttered. "Now I'm seeing ghosts." He went back inside and locked the door. Later that night, after the lights dimmed, he sat at his counter and checked the old hollow frame that sat near the register. It flickered softly, displaying a grainy image, a group of soldiers in armor, grinning, holding mugs of beer. He was in the middle, younger, eyes full of fire. Most of those faces were gone now. "Guess I'm still feeding people," he murmured, "just not shooting at 'em anymore." He turned the frame face down and sighed. The diner was silent except for the steady hum of the generator and the rain tapping against the window. He closed his eyes and almost drifted off when he heard something faint. A knock. Not at the door. At the back of the diner. He frowned, stood up, and reached under the counter for the old service pistol he kept for show more than use. It still had a charge cell in it, probably weak, but enough to scare off a thief. He walked toward the back door, boots scraping softly. The knock came again. 3 quick taps, then 1 long. Not random. A pattern. He hesitated, then opened the door. The smallest alien child, Spoon, stood there, drenched, clutching something in its tiny hands. Its eyes glowed faintly with panic. Behind it, the alley stretched empty and wet. Thomas lowered the pistol immediately. Hey, what's wrong, kid?" Spoon didn't speak. It couldn't, but it opened its hands. Inside was a piece of jewelry, a medallion, half the size of Thomas's palm. It shimmered faintly with moving light, like stars trapped in crystal. Around the edge, he could see symbols, ancient, angular, beautiful. He blinked. "That's not from around here." The child made a series of urgent clicking sounds, pointing to the medallion, then to the sky. Thomas frowned, confused. "You want me to hide this?" The child nodded sharply, eyes wide. He sighed. All right. He took the medallion and tucked it into the pocket of his apron. "You got it, but you better tell whoever's chasing you to take it easy. I'm not looking to get vaporized." The child made another series of clicks, softer this time, almost like gratitude. Then it turned and darted back into the darkness before he could say anything else. Thomas stood there a long time, staring down the empty alley. The rain fell harder now, glowing under the neon. Somewhere above, far beyond the smog and clouds, a faint rumble echoed, the kind that wasn't thunder. He looked up, heart beating faster. For a moment, he thought he saw something through the haze, lights moving in formation across the upper atmosphere. Too steady to be natural. Too large to be civilian. Ships. Warships. Thomas stepped back inside slowly, his instincts, long buried, starting to whisper again. He checked the medallion one more time. Up close it was even stranger. The center wasn't solid. It seemed to hold a tiny swirl of light. Like a fragment of space itself. He felt it pulse, faintly. Like a heartbeat. "Kid," he muttered under his breath. "What the hell did you bring me?" Outside, the rain hissed harder. The neon lights flickered. And far above, the first shadows of something vast moved across the sky. Thomas Hale didn't know it yet. But tomorrow, the galaxy would come knocking on his diner door.